Welcome to the TAOFit method. Today we're going to be working on some shoulder mobility and spinal mobility, specifically getting into nice big baby roll stretches, and ideally kind of connecting our shoulder mobility into that spinal mobility of the baby roll. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with our staff. Want to get a nice shoulder width grip on the staff. I want to imagine that we're trying to bend or break that staff into two. So now I want that bend to happen working through the wrist, spiraling through the elbows. So elbow pits should be kind of spiraling up to the ceiling, and shoulder blades spiraling down, packing down towards the hip pockets. We're going to start with the staff at just right at hip level, and we're going to get into breath and work some pelvic tilts first. So taking nice slow inhales in through the nose, nice slow exhales out through the mouth. I want to imagine that abdominal wall is like a balloon that you're trying to get to expand, not just forward into the belly, but out through the sides and into that low back area. As you feel that inhale on the exhale, feel that navel drawing up and into the spine. And as we're working in and out with that breath, we're going to start getting into some pelvic tilts. On the inhale, allow the pelvis to tilt forward, creating more sway in the back. Belly's going to kind of open up. As we exhale, drawing the navel in, we're scooping that tailbone. So we're kind of getting that tailbone to tuck underneath. Inhale takes it the opposite direction. Exhale, nice scoop. Now, I want to pay attention to tightness, tension in that low back area. I want to make sure we're not moving into pinch or pain. So as you inhale and exhale, if you notice there's some sensitivity in that low back, I want to make sure that we are keeping it below a level 3 on a scale of 0 to 10. And if it is kind of elevated, then just tone it back. Don't move so far. If you're not getting pinch and pain, see how far can you allow that pelvis to tilt? How much sway can you get in the back? How much can that belly open up? And then as you exhale and scoop, how much can you feel that tailbone tucking underneath? And now we're going to start to add in our shoulders. So again, we got that nice grip on the staff. I'm trying to bend it or break it into two pieces. On the next inhale, as that belly opens up, on your exhale, we're bringing our elbows up towards our ears. I want to make sure that exhale is a scoop. Feel that core engaged. And we're seeing how far can we bring those elbows up to the ears on the exhale. Inhale, let the arms soften. Again, filling up that belly, pelvis tilts forward. Exhale, navel draws in, scoop as you pull those shoulders back lightly. Now I want to start to play with what do the shoulders feel like as we're getting that scoop? How far can you go? Is there tension? Is there discomfort? I want to make sure that we're not moving into pain. And I don't want to force my elbows behind my ears, especially if it causes my ribs to stick out and for me to come into that the wrong position. I don't want to get belly opened up as I'm pulling back. We should be in that scoop position as we're pulling. We're going to get a good 10 up to 20 reps of this nice squeeze into it. With each one, see if you can pull back a little bit more without going into pain. And as we're doing this, notice if there's a difference in how it feels on the left shoulder compared to the right shoulder. Is one side a little tighter, stiffer, achier than the other side? Going to go ahead and bring the staff back down. We're going to move it to the back behind the body. Palms are facing back away from the body. I'm still actively trying to bend the staff, but I want to bend it away behind me. So elbow pits are still going to spiral forward. As we get that spiraling action, shoulder blades should roll back and drop down towards our hips. From here, we're still in that nice crocodile or balloon breath, filling up the abdominal wall on the inhale. As we exhale, again, drawing navel to spine, we're slowly lifting elbows up towards the ceiling. Again, making sure that we're not going into pain. Inhale lets the shoulders soften. Exhale, nice lift and squeeze into it. In each one, we're slowly seeing if we can lift a little bit higher and a little bit higher without forcing it. Again, I want to make sure that we're not pushing into pain. Level 1, level 2 is slight discomfort, slight stretch, but I do not want to go into that level 3 or above. And again, notice, how does this feel right shoulder compared to left shoulder? Is one side tighter, stiffer, achier than the other side? After we get about 10, even up to 20 reps, we can now flip our palms. So our palms are now facing forward. We're still kind of actively trying to bend that staff away from the body. And as we get that spiral through the elbows, it should kind of open up the chest a little bit more. Everything else that we just did is the same. Breathing into that belly. On the exhale, navel draws in as we slowly lift the elbows up to the ceiling. Again, with each one, make it a nice slow squeeze. I don't want to force my arms up. I want to squeeze into it and see if I can get a little bit more of a millimeter of range on each one. But again, I don't want to force it and I don't want to move into pain. Again, after about 10 to 20 reps, we're going to bring the arms back down to the hips. I want to stay here with our hands in that position, palms facing forward. I want to actively reach my hands like I'm pushing the staff to the floor. That's going to help to drop the shoulders. I want to make sure our shoulders are not shrugging up at this point. And now we're going to do a little bit of neck mobility from this position. Now, if you find that you have vestibular issues, that turning your head makes you feel dizzy, lightheaded, makes the room spin, go ahead and sit down to do this part. I don't want you to do it in a standing position if there's a risk of falling. So from here, we're going to start by checking our blind spots. Nice inhale when we're at the center. We're going to exhale as we turn our head, looking over our right shoulder. Inhale as we bring it back to the center, and then exhale as we slowly look over the left shoulder. And as I turn, I really want to turn and reach from my chin. I want to see how far can we get the chin to line up to the edge of the shoulder or even beyond. And I want to do that because it's very common to reach from the forehead, which causes a tilt in the head, this is not the position I want to get into. I want that nice, tall, stacked head over the spine. Reaching from the chin will get us a little deeper into those, deeper neck mobility, deeper into the cervical vertebrae. And as you're going back and forth, notice the difference on the left side compared to the right side. Is one side tighter, stiffer? Is it painful? If it's painful, then I want to back off and I want to keep this really low in the level 1 to level 2 area. I don't want to get close to a level 3. If you are noticing a difference right side to left side, how does that relate to what you noticed in the shoulder mobility when we were working with the staff just a moment ago? We'll come back to our starting position, and now we're going to do some light tilt and lift. So keeping the eyes forward, we're going to tilt one ear lightly towards the shoulder. This is not a heavy tilt. I'm not trying to touch my shoulder. Very light. Opposite ear then is being lifted as if you're trying to touch the ceiling with your ear, or that you have it like you have a piece of string pulling that ear up to the ceiling. And we're going to go back and forth on that. So nice inhale at center, exhale, light tilt and lift. Inhale as we bring it back to center and go to the other side. I want to see if we can feel that as a nice little stretch kind of through this front triangle area of the neck. As we're going back and forth, we can also add in more reach down through that hand, through the staff. So as that ear is lifting up, that same side hand can be pressing down. I want to see if we can create that traction stretch in the neck. As we're going back and forth on this, I want to continue to notice, how does it feel different on the right side compared to the left side? And again, how does that relate to what we noticed in our shoulder mobility? Is one side of the neck tighter, and is that congruent with that shoulder also being tighter? Good. So last for the neck, we're going to do some shallow neck rolls, starting by letting the chin drop down towards the chest. Now, I want to stay shallow. I don't want to try to force this deep, especially for the first rep. So I want to make sure it's not painful. So with chin to chest, we're then going to let the right ear roll towards the right shoulder. Again, light roll. Then we'll let our eyes come up to the ceiling. Then the left ear moves to the left shoulder, and then chin back down to the chest. And we're going to continue to work through those 4 points. And as we work through them slowly, the first thing is making sure that it is not painful. And if it's not painful, then we can try to smooth those 4 points out into more of a circle. And as you're doing that, you can slowly work a little deeper into the roll. Again, as long as it is not painful. If you notice some kind of crepitus, some crunchiness in the neck, if as long as that is not a painful crunch, it is okay to move into it. In fact, I kind of want to move into that crackle. I want to decrackle the crackle in the neck. If it is painful, then you need to back off related to the pain. Once we get a good number in one direction, we're going to come back to our starting point, and we're going to go the opposite direction now, starting shallow again. So chin to chest, and now we'll go left ear light to the left shoulder, eyes come up to the ceiling, light, look, and then right ear to the right shoulder, and then chin back down to chest. I want to start with those 4 points again and keep it shallow, because just because we work one direction of our circle doesn't mean the other direction won't be painful. So I want to get into it slowly. And then once we get into it, we can start to smooth it out and make it a little deeper, as long as we are not moving into pain. And if you got that crackliness in there, as long as it's not painful, we can start to get in and decrackle the crackle. Good. All right. We're going to go ahead and set the staff down to the side. And now we're coming back in, doing a little bit more shoulder work. So bringing hands down to the side, palms, I want to spread them as wide as you possibly can. Get your fingers open so that you feel stretch within the joints of the hand. Elbows are actively extended, and we're going to spiral our palms as much as we can up towards the ceiling. From here, we're going to shrug, let the shoulders move up to the ears As we shrug, we're going to spiral the palms so that the thumbs turn down to the ceiling. Allow the hands to move a little bit in front of the body, and then reach and extend so that you get a nice rounded upper back. See if you can feel some stretch in between the shoulder blades. Then we're going to inhale and shrug and pull everything back. As we shrug, we're spiraling the palms all the way back up to the ceiling. And then as we get our hands back to our hips, reaching down to the floor. So we're going to exhale as we shrug, rolling forward. This is our exhale as we reach. And then we're inhaling as we shrug and roll back, palms up, very end reaching down. And as we're getting that movement of the shoulders, we're now going to add in our pelvic tilts. So when the palms are up, hands reaching down, belly's opened up, pelvis is slightly tilted forward. As we exhale, lifting and reaching, we're scooping, turning that tailbone underneath as we reach and roll. I want to see if we can get a stretch down into that low back, all the way up into the upper back. And then as we inhale, opening up, reaching down, can you feel some stretch across the top of the chest? And if you're struggling to kind of get your breath in the right order, that's okay. It's not really as important to do the breath perfectly. I do it in a specific way because I'm trying to teach the mobility, but it's okay to do it a little bit differently as well sometimes. All right, so last thing for standing is we're going to get into a little bit of foot mobility work. We're going to get a wide stance. Feet are going to be perfectly forward. We're going to bring step one foot forward in front of the other foot so that we have a little bit of an offset stance. And then we're shifting our weight onto that front foot so that we have about 70% of our weight forward, 20 to 30% in that back leg. So with this front leg is the one we're going to be focusing on. I want to spread the toes wide, and then we're going to lightly lift that heel off the floor. And I don't want a high lift. I just want it high enough that we could slide a piece of paper underneath the foot. So again, I got my weight is shifted over, and I want to feel that weight moving through the front of my thigh into the ball of the foot. I kind of want to imagine that my foot is kind of screwed into the floor at the ball of the big toe and the ball of the pinky toe, so that those two points of my foot don't roll and move on the floor. So from here, we're going to start doing some rotation through the knee, letting the knee roll in and then letting the knee roll out. But as I'm doing these movements through the knee, I don't want my foot to roll on the floor back and forth. By keeping those 2 points, we're going to try to wring the midfoot out a little bit to mobilize it. And if you watch your knee as your knee turns in and you look at your heel, when your knee turns in, your heel turns out. And as your knee rolls out, your heel should turn in. And with that forefoot being stuck to the floor, that means we're kind of wringing out that midfoot area like a washcloth. Once we get a good 10 or so reps, we can switch to the other side. So again, wide stance, opposite side steps forward, shifting our weight, spread the toes wide, and then lightly lift the heel. Feel that weight moving into that ball of the foot like you're planting it down into the floor. And then we can get into that rotation through the knee. Things to pay attention to on this are, is it harder to kind of nail or screw the forefoot to the floor on one side compared to the other side? My left foot is a lot stiffer. It's harder to keep that forefoot grounded. on this side than it is on the other side. So paying attention to those differences in the feet, really, really important. And again, noticing knee and heel, how they relate on that internal to external, and can you feel that kind of work and mobilization through the foot? May not feel like a stretch specifically, but it might feel like the muscles of the foot are getting fatigued because they're working hard. All right, now we're going to go ahead and drop down to the floor. We're going to get into a nice wide V-sit. In my V-sit, I want to actively reach the knees like we're trying to touch the floor. We're actively pulling our feet back like we're trying to touch the top of our foot to our shin. That active knee, active foot, you should feel your quads kind of engaged. We're going to bring hands to the floor behind the hips. And I want to see if we can ground the palms into the floor. Elbow pits are going to spiral out and away, which should help to kind of open up and lift the chest. So from that nice tall position, we're going to get into some spirals through our knees, rotating those knees out and away. I'm imagining that I'm trying to touch my kneecap to the floor on the outside of my body on the exhale. And then on the inhale, I'm bringing it in and I'm seeing if I can touch the floor to the inside of my body with my knees. I'm not focused on my feet. I'm not worried about how far I can reach with my feet because I'm really trying to get this movement to be all the way up into the hip. So the knee moving means that I'm going to get that movement all the way up into that hip socket. And this one's a good one to kind of pay attention to the difference on the right side and the left side. How far does the kneecap travel on the right side compared to the left when you're rotating it out and when it's rotating in? Does one side go further than the other side? The other thing to notice is how does it feel in the hips? Is one side clunky? Does it feel a little tight? Does it pinch? Those are going to be pretty important assessment points, especially if you're dealing with some hip, knee, foot, low back issues. Now we're going to add a little bit of ankle flossing to this. As we spiral those knees out and away, then we're going to point the toes and then spiral the knees in. And then we're pulling the toes back towards the shin, making a nice little circle through the knees and through the ankles. Now, on this movement, not uncommon to kind of get some cramping, like Charlie horse feel in the arch of the foot. So go slow and be soft with it. If you're feeling pretty good and you want to get a little more out of it, then as you point, you can actually start to flex the toes, letting them grip. And then as you pull back, spread them as wide as you can on that pull. And once we get a good number in one direction, we are now going to reverse directions of the ankle circles. Again, nice slow movement. If you're able to grip the toes as you reach, spread as you pull. And hopefully you're feeling that nice kind of flossing effect through the ankle and still getting some of that good mobility into the hip itself. So now we're going to shift into our shin box position. So I'm in my left side shin box, basically making a box with my shins or a 90-90 position. My left hand is coming down outside the left hip, and I want to ground my palm into the floor. I want to shift weight over to that hip. I am not trying to keep my back hip on the ground. In fact, I want it to float so that I can play with this range of motion so that I can be mobile with it. Elbow pit spiraled out and away, Shoulder blade is packed down and back so that we have a nice tall spine. And we're going to start with just some our knee openers, kind of our clamshells on the back leg. So nice breath into that belly. On the exhale, we're drawing the navel up and into the spine as we slowly lift that back knee up to the ceiling. Inhale as we let it back down. And with each exhale as we lift, we're seeing how high can we bring it slowly, not forcefully. I don't want to do this at speed. Can we squeeze a little bit more range on that exhale? Inhale, letting it back down. And notice, where do you feel tightness on this particular movement? Do you feel it more through the adductors? Do you feel it more kind of the top front of the hip? Or do you get a pinch in the back, in the glute area? And I want to kind of get that good sense for how high does that knee go so that we can compare it to the other side when we switch sides. I generally have pretty good knee hip mobility on my right side. My right knee is doing pretty okay this morning. We're going to go ahead and switch to the other side and do the same thing. So grounding that right palm, spiraling the elbow, packed shoulder, tall spine. Weight is shifted over so that back hip is off the floor. Nice inhale into our crocodile breath. Exhale as we slowly lift. Left hip is tighter than the right hip. My range of motion is not terrible. It's just barely a little bit less. Probably hard to even visually tell, but I can feel it definitely a little off compared to the other side. So noticing these imbalances are really, really crucial and important. It's really important and valuable as far as improving movement and noticing where our pain patterns are actually coming from. And hopefully, as you're going through this, that hip is opening up, feeling a little more mobile, and you're getting a little bit more range of motion out of it. My left hip actually opened up pretty considerably there. We're going to switch back to our starting side. So again, palm is grounded, shoulders packed. We're still working into this back hip, but we're not going to lift that knee. So now inhale. I want to imagine that my inhale has weight to it, and that breath is moving down like it's filling up a bowl or a bowling ball into that back hip bowl. And so as I inhale, that back hip is dropping and reaching to the floor. But I don't want to shift my weight into it to try to push it down. My weight is still over here. I'm playing with that movement. I want to feel that hip drop. Then on the exhale, I'm letting that hip lift straight up. And I'm reaching it forward. And then I want to see if I can scoop the tailbone underneath at that last point. If we're able to do that, we should start to feel some stretch through the front of the thigh. Inhale, letting that weight fill that bowl up, reaching it to the floor. Exhale, lifts, reaches forward, and actively scoops. Now, if you have significant tightness in the front of the hip, we're just going to play and work into that tightness. I want to move into that juicy stretch. See if we can get that stretch to open up a little bit, give us a little bit more range. This one's a good area here to notice how far does that hip travel? How close to the floor can you get? Can you touch the floor? Or is it a little offset from the floor? And then how far forward can you get? How big does that stretch feel so that we can compare it to the other side? Which we'll go ahead and do now. Nice slow transition as we move to the other side. Again, grounded palm, spiraled elbow, packed shoulder, tall spine, weight is shifted. So that back hip is free. Breath in filling up that bowl, like that back pelvic bowl, like it's a bowling ball. Feel it reach to the floor. Exhale, lifts up, reaches forward, and then actively scooping that tailbone. Can you start to feel that stretch through the front of the thigh? And as you're going back and forth on this, start to notice how far does that hip drop to the floor compared to the other side? As you're exhaling, scooping, how far forward are you able to get? Is it a bigger stretch on this side or is it less? It's not uncommon for the second side to be the tighter side because our bodies are pretty smart. And when we get into positions, it tends to get into the position on the side that we have more mobility and it's easier to do. So when we get to that second side, most people are going to find that that second side, unless we specifically start on the tighter side, that second side is going to be tighter than the first. Once we kind of even out on this side compared to the other side, we're going to slowly transition back across. And we're going to do that same breath into that back hip bowl. Exhale, lift, scoop. So all the first parts are going to be the same. Now we're going to add in another component. So I'm changing my position to kind of show the next phase, but all the first part is still happening. Inhale into that back hip bowl, letting it reach to the floor. Exhale, lifts, reaches forward and scoops. And then next, I want to turn and rotate my shoulder and my chest. And it's kind of like I'm trying to reach my opposite shoulder through this front knee. Saying, can I reach that shoulder to that point of the knee? Inhale, I'm rotating back, filling up that back bowl, reaching the hip to the floor. Exhale, hip lifts, reaches forward, scoops. I want to lock in that scoop on that back hip first, then continue to exhale as we rotate, reaching that shoulder towards the knee. Adding in this rotation, we should have a little bit of that stretch in the back hip. And then we're adding to it, which may get us some stretch through that low back or even up into the mid or upper back. Once we do about 10 or so reps, we're going to switch to the other side. Again, same position, grounded palm, spiral to elbow, packed shoulder, weight is shifted. Inhale into that back hip bowl. Exhale, lifts, reaches forward, actively scoop, get that hip locked in, and then we're rotating that shoulder like we're trying to reach through that knee in front. Inhale, brings it all the way back. Now, whichever hip is tighter on this exhale and scoop, more than likely you're going to find that means you're also tighter and more restricted in the rotation related to it. I'm definitely having that. In fact, I had a nice little adjustment in my back on the first one. And I get into this exhale, this is tighter on this side than it was on the other side. And as I rotate, low back, little tighter, more restricted, harder position to get into. So I don't want to force it, but I do want to play in that kind of juicy nature of the stretch, see if I can get it to open up and kind of balance out to the other side more. And once we have our 10 or so reps, we're going to come back to our starting side. And now we're going to get into our folds. So for folds, we're going to use our arrow as the knee today. So I'm going to bring one hand to one side of my knee, the other hand to the opposite side. I want to be nice and equal. And we're going to press lightly into the floor so that we can kind of get our shoulders square to our hands, square to our to the floor. So I want shoulders nice and square, sternum kind of split right through that knee. So center of chest, square to that knee. We're going to inhale into that same back hip bowl, even though our hands are down. Exhale, that back hip is lifting, moving forward, scooping, and I want to lock in that back hip. Then we're going to continue to exhale as we slide our hands forward. Want to keep that sternum moving as much as we can through the chest. Inhale, we're bringing it all the way back up, filling up that back hip bowl. Exhale, lift, move forward, scoop, then continue to slide. I want to keep those hands even. I don't want one hand reaching further than the other. I'm trying to keep those shoulders square so that we're moving squarely through that knee with our as much as we can with our sternum. And notice, where do you feel this tightness, tension in this movement? Do you feel it more in the back hip? Do you feel it in your low back? Or do you feel it more in the glute of the leg that is in front? And we're going to do a good 5 to 10 nice slow reps. And then we're going to switch sides and we're going to do the same thing. So again, finding that, getting into that shin box, squaring up the hands to the knee, squaring the shoulders to the hand by pressing into the floor, feeling, make sure the shoulders are even to the floor. Inhale into that back hip bowl. Exhale, let it move, lift, move forward, actively scoop. Feel that loaded stretch locked in that back hip. Then reaching forward, letting those hands slide. Sternum moves through that knee. Inhale all the way back up, filling up that back hip bowl. Let it reach to the floor. Exhale, scoop, and then nice reach forward. We're starting out with very right angles. I'm trying to get you into a very squared position so that we can use this as a good assessment to compare the left side to the right side. So how does this side feel compared to the previous side? Is it tight in the same places, or is it different? Do you have more tightness in the back, front of the back hip? Do you feel it in your low back more, or do you feel it in the front of the glute space on the front hip? With my left hip being tighter, this side is a lot harder. Getting into that scoop and then reaching into it. I really feel this back hip more than anything. And once we get evened out on that, now we're going to kind of go back and forth on these folds. So we're going to do a nice slow windshield wiper across. At this point, I'm no longer going to use my knee as the arrow. I'm just going to find where my body comfortably wants to fold. Continuing to slide through those hands. I want to reach evenly as I inhale, coming all the way back up. We'll do a breath cycle, exhale to inhale, so that we're ready to exhale and fold on the opposite side. And we're going to do a good number of reps going back and forth, nice and slow. This allows us to continue to compare one side to the other side. I want to compare how is it similar and how is it dissimilar. Where are you noticing tightness and pain? Hopefully not pain, tightness and tension. That's more on one side of your shin box fold compared to the other side. Where are those areas? And as we're getting into these a few good 3 to 5 reps, we're going to start to change our shin box angle. We're going to let that back leg slide open a little bit as we get into our fold. This will change a little bit of that mobility aspect on that back hip. When you're transitioning back across, you can let that leg slide back in to make that transition easy, and then slide the second leg into that same open space. Nice exhale as you fold. And with each one, we're going to see, we're going to continue to slide that leg a little bit further back and a little bit further back as far as we comfortably can. If you get to a point where you can't slide it any further, then that's okay. That's as far as you need to go. We'll just keep working at that, in that space. If your hips are relatively open and you can continue to slide and open up that shin box angle, we'll continue to get bigger on it until we get closer and closer to what we'd start considering kind of a yoga class pigeon pose. Although I'm not overly concerned about the end range of the pose, I'm more concerned with where we're limited at it and working within those limitations. We'll do a few more. If you're still working to open up a little bit more, and start getting a little bit deeper into that reach, as long as we're not forcing it and as long as we're not going into pain. Good. All right. So now we're going to get onto our back. This is where we get into our baby rolls. So laying on our back, both feet, I want the toes pointed straight up to the ceiling. Try not to let your toes roll out towards the floor. Try to keep them straight up. And we're going to push the heels down into the floor evenly. I want about 5 to 10 pounds of downward pressure through the heels. That should cause the hips to feel a little bit engaged to the floor. We're going to bring our arms up into a nice Y position overhead. If your shoulders do not rest and your elbows do not rest, if they're off the floor, bring them out a little wider until you find that they can touch the floor comfortably. From here, we're taking nice, slow breaths into that crocodile balloon breath through our abdominal wall. And we're going to do some rotation work through the spine. We're getting into baby rolls. If you have sensitivity in the low back, I want you to go through this incredibly slowly. Start small. And if you feel anything that's uncomfortable, painful pinch, back off. Don't push through it. So nice inhale into that abdominal wall. As you exhale, go ahead and let your eyes look to one of your hands. We're going to reach across with the opposite hand, and we're going to see if we can match our fingertips to fingertips, reaching through. Again, I want to make sure that's not painful in the back. Inhale, we're coming all the way back to the floor. Exhale, look to your fingers on the other side. Bring that opposite hand across and see if you can match hands. Inhale, coming back to center. Once you kind of get a sense of this reach across on that exhale, making sure that it is not painful in your back, I want you to go ahead and pay attention to your heels again. Are they still pressing down, and are those toes straight up to the ceiling? I want to maintain that downward pressure through the heels and toes straight up as we reach across and match those fingers. So that can feel real challenging to kind of focus on reaching through the hands and keeping those feet engaged. So just do the best that you can. And you might notice that it's a lot harder to reach on one side of the body than it is to the other side. And that's going to be an important thing to notice, right? That's going to be an imbalance of movement through our spine and our hips, which is part of the reason that this is such a really powerful and beneficial movement to go through. Now, in the next reach, as you reach across, we're going to stay there for a few breaths. And I want to spread that hand wide. And we're going to do very slow spirals through that arm. And I want to stay slow because we got this shoulder in tension and it might be a little sensitive deep into that shoulder socket. So we're going to do nice little spirals, turning the palms up to the ceiling and then down to the floor as we're reaching away. Again, I want to continue to have the downward pressure through the heels, and I'm reaching, trying to extend those fingers far and then spiraling, seeing if I get some nice, interesting mobility and stretch down into the shoulder and chest. We can then inhale as we bring it back down, and then exhale as we go across to the other side. Doing the same thing. Nice slow inhale, exhale, holding the position, spread the hands wide, and then slow rotations, trying to turn that palm down to the floor, up to the ceiling. Again, making sure that we're not pushing into shoulder pain. If you got a deeper stretch on one side than the other, as long as it's not painful, that's good. I want to play in that juicy nature of the stretch. And we'll bring it back to our starting position on the floor. And now we're going to start to work reaching through the knees or through the legs. So I'm bringing my left leg straight up to the ceiling, and I want to point my toes like I'm trying to touch or reach out and extend through the tips of my toes. And I'm going to let my leg roll across. I don't want my leg to drop all the way to the floor. I want to keep it up high as if I'm reaching up onto a shelf. So I'm going to reach through those toes, and I want to let it kind of pull my shoulder blade off the floor, but I want to keep some contact with the back of my hand. Inhale, I'm bringing that leg all the way back down, going to the other side. Opposite leg lifts, pointing that toe. I'm going to reach across the body as if I'm trying to touch something up on the wall. It's allowed to lift my hip. It's allowed to lift my shoulder off the floor, but I want to keep some contact with the back of the hand. Inhale, brings it back down. Exhale, lift, point, and reach. Allow it to pull that hip across as long as it is not painful on the hip, low back, or shoulder. With each one, we're seeing if we can reach a little bit further. And if you're getting to a point where you do have pinch or pain, then back off. That's as far as you need to go, but continue to work up to that point as long as you're not moving into that pain. I don't want to move into that aggravation. If you're able to get a nice reach through the toes, on the next one, as you reach, start to counter reach through the fingers, same side fingers, reaching opposite direction from those toes. See if you can create a nice traction stretch from fingertip to toe tip. And notice if it's different on one side. Do you get a bigger stretch in your chest? Do you get a bigger stretch in your low back? Are you able to go as far on both sides? Does one side feel a little tighter and more restricted? Good. We'll come back to our starting side. Now we're going to roll over onto our belly. And we're going to bring our arms straight overhead. I want to keep elbows tight towards the ears on this part. I don't want the arm to move away from the ear and come out into this space. I'm trying to stay straight overhead. And from here, keeping that elbow pinned to the ear, fingers are nice and spread, open palm. We're going to lift that elbow up to the ceiling. And as we lift, we can look through the corners of our eyes, and it's going to start to roll us towards our back. As I roll, I'm going to change my position on this. As I reach and roll, my knee is going to slide up to hip level, keeping contact with the floor. And I'm going to see how far can I turn as if I'm trying to touch my upper back to the floor. Inhale, I'm coming all the way back down to the floor. Let that leg slide back in place. And then exhale as we lift to the other side. Again, keeping that elbow tight to the ear. Try to keep that arm touching the ear if you can. Leg slides up, staying in contact with the floor. Seeing how far can we roll. Keeping that knee touching. Inhale as we come to the center. Exhale as we get that nice slow roll. Again, going slow. Want to make sure we're not moving too fast or going too far. I don't want to push into pain. All of this should feel good and juicy, not stressful or painful. Good. For the last one, we're going to bring our arms now straight out to the sides. We can keep our forehead on the floor, or you can let your head kind of turn to one side. From here, we're going to bend one knee, lifting a foot up to the ceiling. And I want to pull the top of the foot towards the shin. So I don't want the toes pointed to the ceiling. I want to pull them down towards the shin. And from here, we're going to lift and reach that heel like we're trying to touch the ceiling. Inhale, we're going to let it back down. And we're going to switch to the other side. So lifting that foot, actively pulling the toes towards the shin, then actively lifting that heel like you're trying to touch the ceiling, and inhale, coming back down. Now, as you lift that hip, that opposite heel to the ceiling, the other hip that should stay flat to the floor. I don't want this hip to start lifting up to where we have a space between the front of the hip and the floor. This hip needs to be down, set to the floor as that opposite side slowly lifts. And this is a slow lift. You may find that you're not able to go very high. You may find that you're barely able to lift that knee up. That's okay. We're going to start with where we're at, and we'll get improvement by putting some footwork and focus into this on a daily basis. Now, if you experience pain or pinch in the back, then I do want to slow on this, maybe pause. That might be a place where take a break on it today and schedule a consultation with me. If you simply can't even lift, then I definitely want to talk to you first. If you're able to get a good lift in that knee, no pain, tightness in the back, then we can start adding in a rotation to it. So as that knee heel lifts up, we can aim that heel like we're trying to touch our opposite shoulder. It's going to lift that hip up and rotate it. And I want to reach and rotate as far as I can without this shoulder starting to lift up off the floor and roll with it. So I want to keep that shoulder. It doesn't have to stay pinned to the floor, but I don't want it to lift too much. Inhale as we bring it back down. Exhale as we lift that opposite side, reach across towards that opposite shoulder, and then inhale, bringing it back. And if this is too much, continuing to work on just lifting, reaching to that heel up to the ceiling is a great place to be working, getting extra reps. That lifting of the heel is active, getting some glute engagement, some glute activation, and lightly gets into some hip and spinal mobility as well. Once you're balanced out on that, we'll let the legs come back down to the floor. We'll stay on our backs, let our knees be bent, feet flat to the floor. Arms can just come down to the floor, rested, let the shoulders soften, palms up to the ceiling. And we're going to take some nice slow breaths. Again, filling up that abdominal wall like a balloon. See if you can feel that belly lift. Exhale. Can you feel that in your belly button? Reach towards your spine to push it into the floor. And then on your next inhale, instead of just feeling the belly lifting up to the ceiling, can you feel your low back spreading into the floor? And give yourself a few, good 3 to 5 breaths to see if you can get that breath to move into the low back, and you can feel that low back spread and engage into the floor. Now, as you're getting that breath to spread into the floor, on your next inhale, keep that part going, but also notice the shoulders. Can you keep the shoulders relaxed and soft? I don't want to feel them shrugging and lifting up to the ceiling. Can you keep them disengaged as you have this nice breath moving into the low back? On the exhale, you can really feel those shoulders kind of soften and let go to help get a sense for how that let go even feels. And then taking a few last breaths to just fill up the ribs. Let that breath come up into the chest, into the shoulders, into the neck. Feel that nice balloon expansion, not just in the abdominal wall, but through the ribs, upper back, lower back. And if you feel any areas of tension in your breath, kind of breathe into that tension, and on the exhale, let it go. And when you're ready, you can very slowly open your eyes and take your time to get up. Make sure you're not dizzy or lightheaded before you come to a seated or standing position.